to sing you some Gold Rush songs today. I'm going to explain about each one as we go. You may be wondering why I brought this old beat-up guitar. Well, it's because I'm very proud of it. This was a gift to me when I was 16 from the great Warren White, who was a guitar maker in San Francisco. And he built this for me and signed it inside. And I've treasured it ever since, and I'm not ashamed of it at all. So, it looks bad, but it still sounds pretty good. Anyway, you're going to hear plenty of that as we go. How about this? Oh, do you remember sweet Bessie from Pike, who crossed the broad prairie with her lover right? 2 yoke of oxen, big spotted hog, tall Shanghai rooster, and little yellow dog. Hoodle dang folly died, oh hoodle dang folly day. One morning they climbed up a very high hill, and with wonder looked down into old Placerville. Ike shouted and jumped 2 feet clear of the ground and said, Bessie, my darling, we've come to Hangtown. Hoodle dang folly died, oh hoodle dang folly day. Long Ike and sweet Bessie attended a dance. Ike wore a pair of his Pike County pants. Sweet Bessie was covered in ribbons and rings. Said Ike, you're an angel, but where are your wings? A miner said, Bessie, will you dance with me? I will, you old horse, if you don't make too free, but don't dance me hard. Do you want to know why? Doggone you, I'm chock full of strong alkali. Hoodle dang folly died, oh hoodle dang folly day. Long Ike and sweet Bessie got married, of course, but Ike, getting jealous, obtained a divorce. And Bessie, well satisfied, said with a shout, goodbye, you big woman, I'm glad you backed out. Hoodle dang folly died, oh hoodle dang folly day. So there's a lot of good history in that song, including the ending. A lot of people don't know that women's liberation started here in California in a big way. And the reason was because in the very beginning, women were completely outnumbered by all the men. And so you couldn't start messing around, doing wrong things with a woman because she'd just leave. She'd go find somebody better. That's what happened to Bessie. And
What was Pike from Pike?
oh, good question. That's one thing I wanted to tell you. Yeah, a lot of people ask that question. I didn't know myself until I was researching for this program.
What was the question?
What's Pike?
Betsy from Pike.
Betsy from Pike. And you hear Pike all the time. Yeah, I did want to talk about this, so I'm glad you asked. Pike is Pike County, Missouri. A lot of people think Pike County, Kentucky. No, it's Missouri. And you don't know why? It's because it was on the west side of the Mississippi River. And really the first American settlement on the west side of the Mississippi River. And because it was there, it led to the gold rush. Because when you wanted to go to California with a wagon, and your oxen, and your animals, and your family, and everything you owned, you didn't have to start by crossing one of the biggest rivers in the world. You were already on the other side. So the Pikers, as they were called, still are, they got here first. Because they didn't have to find some way to cross that huge river with all of this equipment. There certainly were no bridges. There were no bridges in the world that big, that long in those days. I don't think. Were there? You would know. This is my wife's last year. So yeah, that's what Pike is, and the Pikers got here first. And so you hear the word Pike a lot in some of these songs because they're about the beginning of the gold rush. There were a lot of Pikers here from Pike County, Missouri. I want to start with a typical song from the early gold rush, which of course was 1849. The gold was discovered, as probably everybody here knows, you're all locals, was discovered in January of 1848 But the year 1848 was when the Californios descended upon the rivers and sandbanks up here in the foothills. Later in the year, there were some travelers from Oregon, because you know the Oregon Trail had brought thousands of Americans out there to mine, not to mine, to farm in the Willamette Valley, one of the most fertile places on the planet. And so they heard about the gold, and they were down here a couple months later. So they were first. The next group was from Hawaii. Why? Well, because it didn't take so long to sail a ship out there for people to get all excited and climb back on the ship and come back to San Francisco. So the second group from outside was from Oregon. Can you guess what the third group was? I bet you can't, once you've read about it. Who were the next people from outside of California to enter California?
Chinese.
What?
Chile.
Chilean. Good. You already know. Somebody back there. Good for you. Good for you. That's exactly right. Chile. What? Chile? Why? That's the other side of the world. Yeah, but you know why? It's because they had a port. Mexico had no ports. Central America had no ports. Chile has a port the size of San Francisco Bay, and it's at the same latitude in the south as we are in Oregon. It's a beautiful place. I've never gotten that far in my travels, but I know about it. And because it was a port, it was full of ships, and because it was a port, the people there tended to be more wealthy, they had more possessions, they were able to leave. So they just took over those ships and started north. So there was a big influx of Chileans in early 1849. And the Americans didn't get here until summer of 1849. And they found the gold fields overrun with Chileans. We'll talk a little more about that later, because I have something about that to tell you. Good, I can still see you all. This is just an early song from the Gold Rush. It's one of the earliest ones I could find. It was written by a guy named Old Put. How many know about Old Put? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. That was his pen name. His real name was John Stone. And like many men, he came out here to mine for gold. And like most men, he was not strong enough. He didn't have the stamina, he didn't have the muscle, he didn't even have the size. I would have failed at it. A lot of strong-looking men failed at it. They just couldn't work that hard. It's the hardest work known to man. I mean, you dig a hole straight down 20 feet deep and maybe 20 feet wide. Just that. But then you have to go through all of the sand and gravel that you dug out of that hole and see if it has any gold in it. Most of the gold will be at the bottom, of course, because of its weight. So there were a lot of people like John Stone. He changed his name to Old Put, and he became a songwriter and a song singer. He was what we would call today a singer-songwriter. And the singing of songs happened on Saturday night. Why? Because the men worked hard all day from sunrise, which in the summer would be, what, 4 in the morning, 4:30? All through the day until the sun went down at night, 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And you just kept working. And so they were totally exhausted. They took Sundays off. They respected the Sabbath. But they threw in Saturday night. They took off on Saturday night, they had a nice dinner, and then they went into town, whatever the town was. Usually a small little place. And there was a tent there, a good-sized tent for entertainment purposes. Paloma had one. I know Placerville had several. I'm not quite sure where they were. But so entertainment would be provided, and some of these men, like Old Put, found out that his songs would be appreciated. And the singer started writing songs about the gold rush. And that's why I'm here tonight. I want to tell you about that. So here's one of his early songs. This is just about how the gold rush got started. All of these songs are parodies. And I hope you all know what that word means. I assume you do. That's a common word. The advantage of a parody is that the person listening to the song already knows the tune. I don't know about you, but when I hear a new song, I listen to the music first. That song can go all the way through. I have no idea what it was about. I see a few smiles. Other people have that experience too. Well, if you have a parody, you already know the music. You already know how the tune goes. So you can listen to the words right away, which is important because they're only going to hear that song one time. And if it's funny or interesting or informative. So this is one of Old Put's songs. Nobody knows why he called himself Old Put. Oh, I should also tell you, he lived up on top of Mount Murphy. You know where that is? Just outside of Coloma. You see that big peak up there? You look up there real close, you can see a bunch of giant boulders right on the top. And the lore is that John Stone somehow pushed them together to the point where he could put a cloth of some kind over the top. And he lived inside those boulders on top of Mount Murphy for many years. These songs were parodies. The song, the music was a parody. People would recognize the music. So sometimes the person writing the song would pick a subject that's just almost the opposite of what the original was about. Just for the humor of it, for the punch of that idea. This song, sure, some of you know it. It's a long time ago, the early 19th century. It was called Oft in the Stilly Night. And it was this mournful, lonesome song about being all alone in a house in the middle of the night. And it sounds like he's up in the top story laying in bed. Maybe there's some people sleeping downstairs, but they don't make any noise. There's no traffic, of course. There's no sound at all. It's complete silence. And you wake up in the middle of the night, and you start thinking about the older times. You start thinking about your youth and the people you used to know. Oh, I've got a verse over here. The guy's name was Thomas Moore. He was a famous poet and a songwriter from the early 19th century. Oft in the stilly night, when slumbers... Right again. Oft in the stilly night, when slumber's chains have bound me, fond memory brings the light of other days around me. The smiles, the tears of boyhood years, the words of love then spoken, The eyes that shone, now dimmed and gone, the cheerful hearts now broken. Thus in the stilly night, when slumber's chains have bound me. I should give you the tune, the last one. Thus in the stilly night, when slumber's chains have bound me, fond memory brings the light of other days around me. So you see, it's a very poignant song. It makes you withdraw and think about personal things. Well, this fellow's name was Mark Taylor. He's my favorite writer of Gold Rush songs. I'm sad and lonely here, though joy and wealth surround me. I dare not speak, for fear some fighting man may pound me. Were I at home, I'd never roam so far from you again. But there I camp for years to come, beside my Peggy Jane. I'm sad and lonely here, though joy and wealth surround me. I dare not speak for fear some fighting man may pound me. I long have looked for gold, but little have I found. I swear that I've been had, for it's not there in the ground. Were I there now, I'd gladly plow, yes, hoe or husk the corn, or even milk that brindle cow who kicks so in the morn. I'm sad and lonely, though joy and wealth surround me. I dare not speak for fear some fighting man may pound me. Well, you get the joke, right? I mean, it's this song about tenderness and sorrow and loneliness, and then the parody is about it's about missing your home so much and being mistreated so bad, and this line about I live in fear that some man would pound me. That's something men don't say. We don't. We can't say that. You call the coward if you say that. I'm a little guy, and I've had to, I've never had to apologize for anything, but I've seen the big guys around me just wanting to fight all the time. They don't tolerate cowardice. But you can't mention it either. That's my point here. I can't stay in these diggings. Few days, Lord, I can't stay in these diggings, and I'm going home. You get the double meaning? A few more days of wind and rain, few days, a few more days of suffering pain, and I am going home. I can't stay here in these diggings. Few days, Lord, I can't stay here in these diggings, and now I'm going home. Those banking thieves I will not trust. Few days, but with me take my little dust, 'cause I'm going home, and I can't stay in these diggings. Oh, few days, Lord, I can't stay here in these diggings, and now I'm going home. I'll leave this world of rags and dirt, few days, and wear a plug and ruffle shirt, and I am going home. Oh, won't I have some high old times, few days. A telling yarns about the mines and I am going home. I can't stay in these diggings. Few days, Lord, I can't stay in these diggings, and I am going home. So consider the impact that would have if you knew the hymn. You sang it every Sunday, and all of a sudden you heard this parody on it. Thank you for coming. That's what you did. That's my friend Jacob. Here's another interesting parody. I think these guys tried to find the farthest away parody meaning that they could. And this is Mark Taylor again. It seems to me he made up a whole new meaning for the word miss. You'll see what I mean. The song, it was another sentimental song, very sentimental by our standards, because we never asked this question. Do they miss me at home? Well, of course, we don't even wonder about that. It's a phone call away. Or you can see them on your smartphone while you talk to them. It's instant communication. The other side of the world, right now, no problem. But think about that. It might only be, 15 miles away on some big project that was too far away from a post office. And you sit there alone in the evening and you think, oh, I miss them. I wonder if they miss me. Well, I wonder if they miss me at home. And the original song asks questions like, did they miss my voice when they're singing together? Things like that. So, Mark Taylor made a parody on that. Do they miss me at home? Do they miss me? It would be an assurance most deep to know that the friends who did trust me were safe. I wish you were here to know that the people I swindled are ignorant now where I roam. Oh, yes, it would be joy beyond measure to know that they miss me at home. Oh, to know that they miss me at home. The merchant, the butcher, the baker have filled up their books with my name, and even the village shoemaker against me has a long-standing claim. And then there's old Regan, my tailor, who done to me so long for his pay. And Jimmy O'Brien, the jailer, I'm glad to be out of their way. I'm glad to be out of their way. The bankers who loan me their money on sureties made by myself, they must think it remarkably funny to miss me and with me their pelf. But now they had better be civil and bleed someone else in their turn, or I'm sure it would trouble the devil my whereabouts ever to learn, my whereabouts ever to learn. There's Carter, whose daughter I courted, while I built up a bill at his store. If stories are true, now recounted, he'll follow me all the land o'er. What last him I reached California, and by a new name I am known. And neither the judge nor attorney will catch me and judge me at home. Will catch me and judge me at home. That's not an exaggeration, by the way. It was perfectly easy to lose yourself very completely in 1849, and even the beginning of 1850. That lasted until statehood kicked in late 1850. But there's a lot of stories about that. People wanted to change their name. Who would know? You just go to a different town where you've never been seen before. You can call yourself anything you like and totally get away with it. It's a song by Stephen Foster. I'm sure you all know that. He wrote lots and lots of songs, and he was alive during the gold rush. Kind of getting started. His better days were later. But he had written this one, Nellie Bly. Couldn't remember the name. So this is Old Foot again, living up on top of Mount Murphy there. He wrote this about. Well, he used that tune to come up with this. Miss Ella, she is 29, has taken 2 degrees. Tore her short tail off behind so she can show her knee. Miss Ella, she's a gallus nag. Miss Ella, she is neat. Her eyes look like a saffron bag and more run off the feet. Take the time, Miss Ella, take the time, Miss Ella, do. And I will rock the cradle and give all the York to you. I forgot to tell you the punchline, which is that Dorothy fell in with Teddy and Al and the other group in that dance club. Was it a club? Anyway, for some reason she had this song in her head. I showed it to her and she could remember it. She sang it to the dance club, and they all went, "Oh, that's great! That is so good! I love that! How does that go?" And they all memorized it. And since then, the last I heard, you may know this, Joyce, they're still singing. They're still...
I'll ask Teddy when they see it.
I'll jump to the last verse. Miss what's the D? Miss Ella has a claim, they say she works it all the while. She creviced around the other day and panned out a little pile. She'll get it all after a while if patiently she waits. Well, I'll leave her when I make my pile of bamboos for the States. Take the time, Miss Ella, take the time, Miss Ella, do. And I will rock the cradle and give all the York to you. Take the time, Miss Ella, take the time, Miss Ella, do. And I will rock the cradle and give all the York to you. Oh, here's my favorite of all. This is Mark Taylor again. I told you about how much I like him. Don't know much about him, but he sure could write a song. Better than Old Foot any day. This is a parody of a song I never heard. It's called The Landlord's Pet. But it's a great tune anyway. And I must admit, I like this so well, I kind of changed it a little bit. It was awkwardly written, I thought. By the way, I should mention that some of these songs were published during the gold rush. There was a printing press in Yuba City, and they would go up there with their works all written out, and they'd have them, typeset and printed. Our local library has a copy of Old Foot's songs. Okay, I'll try it there. That should work. Now, unlike all of these other songs that I brought, this is the only one that is not sarcastic. It's just straight ahead truth. It's a description of the gold rush from the first-hand, eyewitness at the time it was happening. And he says he was a middle-class fellow from Pike, grew up there, had everything he needed, he got an education, he was well-spoken, he had a lot of friends, and everything was going fine, and then he heard about this gold. Oh, once I was a right smart lad when I set out from Pike. Had a heap of good friends, I never got blue, I did whatever I liked. But look at me now, dressed in rags, these gooseberry hides my toes. I sewed another patch from an old corn sack to hide each new hole in my clothes. When I first started out from Pike and headed west, I was sure I'd find a big spring out here and have some pay for my pain. And I landed here in the mines, but now I only wish I'd stayed. This working in the water's gonna kill me, and I'm sick of picking the spade. I've drifted out and washed, I've preached and done, I've worked my flesh to the bone, but never have I had as much as a slum that I could consider my own. I'm sick of this country, I'm down at the heel, I'm dirty and ragged and cold. I burned my ears, aged 10 years, trying to get some of this gold. But I'm gonna labor and struggle and sweat till I make some kind of strike. And the minute I get a little money ahead, this old bird of families from Pike. And you'll see me there in a rocking chair in a brand new suit of clothes. I'll take my rest in the land that's best, where the old Mississippi flows. I'll no more roam, but I'll go back home and stay there till I'm old. I'll travel no more to the western shore and dig in the dirt for gold. I've never even seen a louse. I mean, I've seen animal lice. I've seen bird lice on wild birds and stuff. But I've never seen a human louse, and we apparently have 2 species. But look at how we've cleaned up, right? Apparently they work everywhere. So this is really a song about, partly about lice. This is by Old Foot. On top of that knot. It's 4 long years since I reached this land, and full of rocks and rocks and sand, and yet I'm poor when the truth is told. I'm a lousy miner. I'm a lousy miner in search of shining gold, in search of shining gold. I've lived on swine till I grunt and squeal. No one can now know how my bowels feel, with flapjacks swimming in the bacon grease. I'm a lousy miner. I'm a lousy miner when the will of my trouble cease, when the will of my trouble cease. I was crawling in lice, coming on the boat, had to throw away my good swallowtail coat. But now here they are, crawling up my back. I'm a lousy miner. I'm a lousy miner. A pile is all I lack. A pile dad was a professor of history, and he was he was of some renown. He had contacts all over the western states, and he was often contacted by other professors and scholars who had a certain question about, especially about the Spanish period of California history, which ran from the 1700s when the Spanish started sailing into this part of the world, and lasted until 1818, was it the Mexican Revolution?
46?
No.
1846.
Yes, 1846 was the end of the Mexican period. But the Mexican period followed the Spanish period. Anyway, my father was an expert in all of that. I shouldn't have to talk it up so much. And I told you earlier about the Chileans, how there were many Chileans that came up. Well, they weren't always unaccompanied because, let's see how do I tell this quickly. Chile freed the slaves in 1828, one of the first countries in the Western Hemisphere to do that. They tried to make it work, but of course, the slaves couldn't just walk out across the countryside and find something to do, some way to make a living, some kind of work, some food to survive on. So they couldn't, they didn't do that. They stayed close to where they'd been. Now they were free, they could come and go, they could do what they liked. But they became indentured because they were paid so little. And that happens throughout history all over the world where poor people are taken in as servants and not paid enough. And so they become indentured. It's called an indentured servant. And it's just one step above slavery. Well, anyway, when the news of the gold strike in California became known in Valparaiso and the other towns in that valley of Chile, there were, as I said before, there were plenty of strong young men with money who were eager to go up and have a look, see what they could make out of that gold rush. Well, they tended to bring some of their slaves along. Oh, goodness. I mean, they're servants. They're indentured servants. Peons, that's what they were called. It's the same word in Spanish and English. They were called peones. Well, my dad had, as I mentioned, a little number of contacts throughout the West. And one of his favorites was a fellow that taught over at what was called San Mateo College, I think. You know about it? His name was Carlos Lopez. And he became something of a family friend because he loved Chilean folk music. And once I found out about it, I do too. That's good stuff, Chilean folk music. And so he wound up being a family friend. He'd come over to our house, hang out, and have dinner, and then spend the evening maybe singing songs. Well, one time he was a little more serious, and he said, "I've got something I want to show you, Ed." That was my father's name. He said that he found a song from California that was made up out of Chileans. And I want to do it for you. And it's kind of it's hard to sing because it's, well, you'll see. It's called La Yaquinita, which means simply the woman of the Yaqui people. Little woman of the Yaqui people, La Yaquinita. I'll translate it first. A lejas tierras voy a partir. To faraway lands I will go. Now this is the peon speaking. A lejas tierras voy a partir. Dejo mi vida, dejo mi hogar. I leave my life, I leave my home. ¿Sabe Dios cuándo voy a tornar? God knows when I'm going to go back. A pisar vuestras tierras, Yaquinita. Literally, to step thy lands again, Yaquinita. Ay chila o mi chila, Yaquinita. Oh, my friend, my woman, Yaquinita. Parece color de chuncaca. You are the color of chocolate candy. The last word is Quechua. And then he says it again, or he says it again in Spanish. Ay chilao mi china barranqueña. Now it's a woman of the cliffs. Parece color de confites. Spanish word for chocolate. So it goes like this. A lejas tierras voy a partir. Dejo mi vida, dejo mi hogar. Sabe Dios cuándo voy a tornar a pisar vuestras tierras yaquinita. Ay chilao mi china yaquinita, parece color de choncaca. Ay chilao mi china barranqueña, parece color de confite.
Work? Is that how God's saying?
Yes, I'm not sure of the connection, but it certainly had to do with the early part of 1849, when the Chileans were free to look for plastic gold wherever they wanted. The reason I say it that way is because when the great horde of Americans got here, half of them coming across the plains on their wagons, the other half coming by sea, having shipped all the way around in South America, all the way to San Francisco. A lot of people, tens of thousands of Americans all at once, they didn't tolerate the Chileans. And they pushed them out if they wanted that land, if they wanted that gold claim. There was no law. There was no law until late 1850 when California became a state. I mean, there were remnants of the Mexican, or the Mexican law enforcement. But there wasn't much enforcement of any law. And so there was no protection for the Chileans. Most of them went back to San Francisco and did well in businesses there until they were ejected from San Francisco as well and had to go back to Chile. Good question. Well, I'm getting toward the end. Would you like to hear one sea chanty before I go to the last song? Okay, this one is mostly British, which makes sense because the British were bringing all the gold seekers from Europe. There were American sea shanties too. A sea shanty, of course, is a work song. And typically in a work song, whoever's in charge of the work project, in this case it would be some kind of officer, I guess, on the ship, a major of some kind. He would sing the first part, and then the workers, which were the sailors in this case, would sing the second part. And it was easy because the work was so routine. Now, they wouldn't even have to think about it. They'd done it 1,000 times. Okay, we're gonna turn the mast around, or we're gonna bring that sail down. And they would sing as they went, just because it made the work more fun. So this one's called Santiano. I'm sure you know what that refers to. President and other towns, Santa Anna, who tried to win the war with the United States but lost. So he became something to sing about. Let's put that way. So here's the call and response. So we're sailing down the river from Liverpool, keep away Santiago, around Cape Horn to Frisco Bay, all on the plains of Mexico. And response. So heave her up and away we'll go, heave away Santiago, heave her up and away we'll go, all on the plains of Mexico. She's a fast clipper ship and a good crew, heave away I told you about Dorothy a little bit. Dorothy Hawkinson, she played the fiddle so well. She was enamored with a guy named Jay Unruh. You get Jay Unruh. He's a fiddle player. I'll leave my friends over here. He's a great fiddle player, just a master and a composer. Maybe you've heard the tune, can't remember it right now, it's called The Lover's Waltz. That was the theme song for the first Ken Burns program, which was on the Civil War. That's where that came from. Anyway, Dorothy loved that tune so much. She came over to my house the day that program was aired. And we were both enthralled by the program, of course. Sitting on the couch, this TV that I never watched, I brought it out, set it on the coffee table, we were watching Ken Burns' program. And Dorothy said something like, I said, I'd love to hear Jay Unruh play on that fiddle. Wouldn't it be great to be sitting, just sitting and watching television and hear your own music come out? And I said, well, why not? So I went in the back room and I brought out a little cassette tape recorder, those things, half plastic. And I had one blank cassette. I brought a Safeway, I think, and a cheap microphone. Brought it all out, set it all together, and we recorded 2 songs. And I just put the cassette in an envelope and I mailed it to Ken Burns. And both of those songs were used years later in the program called The West. And it had a section on Gold Rush. And this was one of the 2 songs that was on there. This is not properly a Gold Rush song. It was probably begun during the Gold Rush, but it was worked on as the years went by. It wasn't published till the 1870s, but there's mentions of it in the 1850s. So we just think it was underway. Here's something like what it came to. Here you see old Tom Moore, a relic of bygone days. And a butt or 2 they call me now, but what care I for praise? For my heart is filled with woe, I often grieve and pine. For the days of old, the days of gold, the days of 49. For the days of old, when the metal of gold, in the days of 49. I had comrades then, a saucy set. They were rough, I must confess, but staunch and brave and true as steel, like hunters from the west. But just like many another fish, they've now run out their life. And like good old kicks, they stood the test in the days of 49. There was Monty Pete, I'll never forget the luck he always had. He'd deal for you both night and day, or as long as you had his cat. One night a pistol laid him out, it was his last day out. He could outroar a buffalo bull, I bet. He'd roar all day, he'd roar all night. He may be roaring yet. One night he found a prostate hole. It was a roaring bad design. And in his flume he went up, and in his, oh come on, in his flume he went up the flume in the days of well, of all the comrades I had then, there's none left now to me. And the only thing I'm fitting for is a senator to be. And the people cry as I pass by, there goes the traveling sigh. That's old Tom Moore, he's a bummer sure from the days of 49. Oh, I miss the boys and all the noise and the gold that once was mine. In the days of old, the days of gold.